what is the effect of the sanctions, of the war, of the kind of realignment that we're seeing places like Venezuela, but also is there any effect on Chile, which is, I know, a place that you spent a lot of time on?
Yeah, no, Katie, the first thing I want to say is people can go and download, it's called Looking Toward China. It's the latest dossier from Tricontinental. You can download it from thetricontinental.org. It's called Looking Toward China, Multipolarity as an Opportunity for the Latin American People. Now, this is a text, a very good text, produced by the office in Buenos Aires, where the team looked carefully at the progressive governments in Latin America and their relationship with China. So, Argentina, for instance, had just joined the Belt and Road initiative late last year. Lots of countries joined the Belt and Road and they don't have to be progressive. 2015, Poland joined the Belt and Road initiative, of China, because they recognize that, hey, listen, China has accumulated surpluses and they have technical know-how to do development work without sort of putting structural adjustment type pressure, which the IMF does.
And can you just explain for people who aren't familiar what the Belt and Road Initiative is and also structural adjustment?
So, the after the world financial crisis 2008, the Chinese basically were confounded because their entire economic model relied on exporting to the United States and to Europe. And after the credit crisis, when the mortgage thing blew up in the United States, the China said, look, they're just not going to buy permanently. They're not going to continue to buy our goods and services. We need to find new markets. That's the way it began. Interestingly, in 2011, Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, comes to Madras in India, into Chennai, and gives a speech talking about the new Silk Road. She says the United States is going to build a Silk Road, goes from India north through Pakistan, up Afghanistan. Well, that was wishful thinking, into Central Asia, to draw Central Asia into the United States orbit and break it away from Russia. That was the speech Hillary Clinton gave in India in 2011. 2 years later, Xi Jinping goes on a tour of Central Asia and he gives a speech where he says we are building we have a project called One Belt, One Road. The idea was to link China to the countries to its west. Now, what the Chinese discovered when they got into this project was that they had totally neglected the peripheral parts of China, including Xinjiang province, where they completely neglected, industrial development and so on. Most of Chinese economic growth had happened at the Pacific coastal region, from north of Beijing all the way down to Shanghai. So from 2013, the Chinese government began to invest quite heavily in Xinjiang province, in Central Asia and so on, building infrastructure, roads, train lines, building processing plants for, foodstuffs and a whole bunch of things. This became eventually the Belt and Road Initiative of the Chinese government. China, took a lot of their surplus money, put that into a bank which loaned money to countries. They were not just going in there and building things. The countries had to take loans as well. So there was all that. And the idea was to basically find new markets and draw new parts of the world into Chinese production. That was, they were not doing this in a philanthropic way. They had an agenda. At the same time, the Chinese felt great insecurity with the US Navy and the Indian Navy and the Singaporean Navy in the Straits of Malacca. China had relied in the Straits of Malacca between Singapore and Indonesia, that area, those shipping lanes. China relies on it for its fuel, for crude oil coming from Saudi Arabia. So they were keen to go around the Straits of Malacca. So they built ports in Burma, they built a port in Gwadar in Pakistan and so on. They started developing pipelines with Russia to draw the crude oil from Russia down directly. So that was the Belt and Road Initiative. And then it went global. They got interested in investing in Africa, investing in South America and Central America and so on. Well, Now, for countries like, for instance, Argentina, they are now presented with a choice. Until the Belt and Road, if Argentina wanted to essentially borrow money from anywhere, they had to go to the International Monetary Fund, which was the US Treasury backed international agency based in Washington, D.C. Now, the International Monetary Fund had basically become a project of the US Treasury Department, and had used debt to insist that countries like Argentina do what's known as structural adjustment, where they adjust their budgetary procedures and so on, in order to benefit the bondholders, the wealthy bondholders. So that was, the IMF policy. Well, now the Chinese appeared with a whole different appearance, what to do. And I think that's the real. Now there's a choice for these countries.